If I ruled the world, I love 'em, baby.
All right, so we are here in the west wing of the George Reynolds compound, and as per usual, as per lately, I'm sitting with my friend Sam.
Hello.
Our guest is Chris Enriquez.
What's up?
And
Thanks
Chris,
for having me.
Well, I want to thank you for something. I'm going to paint a picture here. Sam and I are booking a lot of people, right? We're trying to get people to do the interviews, and we got a bunch of guests lined up. And what I noticed is we're probably going to be driving around Brooklyn, Queens, Bronx, and Manhattan to get these interviews done. But you, even though you're from Brooklyn, you came here to my house. And anyone that comes to my living room is a hero, because that means I don't have to leave my house.
Yeah, we thank you, definitely. I mean,
It's my pleasure.
definitely. And even it's fucking far from Greenport to over here. So even if that's the angle you want to take, it's still like how long did it take you? Like 3 hours to drive from Greenport?
No, it's like an hour and a half. I got lost because this is not the part of Long Island that I'm from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, truth be told, I was trying to paint you to be a nice guy, but you were out here because you were visiting your parents for Thanksgiving.
No, man. And you know what? I also just love talking shop, and you guys do too. So it's perfect, you know.
And what was you're from Long Island, but your stomping grounds were Manhasset. You were from Nassau, right?
Yeah, that's right. So Manhasset, if anyone doesn't know, is kind of like Bill O'Reilly's from Manhasset. So it's like a very...
Right. I thought it was Levittown.
No. Well, I mean, if he was from Levittown, he eventually moved to Manhasset because when I was growing up. But I just bring that up because that sort of epitomizes what Manhasset is like. It was a very conservative, rich, very Republican too.
Yeah.
So that's where my family raised me, and you know, in a weird way, just being around all that, I think, drove me to want to find something different.
So how did Bill O'Reilly influence your life?
Yeah, he influenced.
What is the O'Reilly factor to you?
He
the O'Reilly factor into you.
He definitely influenced me to not want to be that.
Okay, good. So not your ride or crash or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
Do you want to know the truth? I listened to one of his audiobooks as a hush falls over the crowd.
It's intriguing because it's kind of it's just crazy, like some of the shit that he says.
I always listen to.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, I'll listen to everyone because I'm
Me too.
curious.
Yeah.
You know your enemy.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Not that I consider that guy an enemy necessarily, but I'm curious what makes people tick. Glenn Beck, I listen to his stuff. I listen to a lot of...
I have a funny story about Bill O'Reilly, though. I have a friend that I was close with that I grew up going to shows with, and Bill
By the
O'Reilly...
way, Chris has a story about it.
Yeah, I know.
I spent an hour and a half going through, fleshing out a bunch of stories, but...
The last thing I thought he was going to say was, I have a funny Bill O'Reilly story.
I do.
But that was not on the list.
My friend that I grew up with, I guess when he was at like Bloomingdale's or something and got back to his car, there was a dent on the car, and there was a note from Bill O'Reilly on the windshield, and he said, "Sorry, I nicked your car. I promise I'll take care of it," and left his phone number and wrote, "Sincerely yours, Bill O'Reilly."
Wow.
You see that? Everybody's got a little bit of good in them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even Bill O'Reilly.
And he
did
took
the right
care of
thing.
it?
I don't know if he took care of it, but he left a note at least. I would imagine if he went out of his way to leave a note,
He probably left like 8675309 or some shit. That's his number. Like, no way he took care of it. So. But still, I was going to say, like, I do, like, you do have to listen to the other side. It's fun to listen to a lot of, like, Tucker Carlson, who sometimes isn't the worst person on the planet.
Right.
Bill O'Reilly. It's interesting to hear just like where they're coming from, because at the end of the day, they're human. So I find it interesting, even though like I definitely disagree with 90% of the shit he says.
Yeah, and a lot of when you listen to somebody else fully beyond the clip, they're never exactly the way they're portrayed. Mm-hmm. You know, so you're gonna find like, oh, I didn't realize this person thought that, and down the line, you get a better sense of yourself and them and like what they're about, and it just doesn't make any sense to me to like just pay attention to one side of the argument. I don't really have a left or right side, but that's why I listen to everybody.
You need to understand the opposition.
And Bill has a podcast now.
Yeah, I know.
He got in the podcast game like all of us.
Right.
Definitely. We're at the ground level.
I've heard
you
it.
should have him on here. He's from Long Island.
Well,
It's on that list.
yeah, I was
man,
going to say,
telling you.
who said he's not on the list? You know?
I'll call up my friend and see if he still has that phone number.
You know what? That's not a bad idea, definitely.
I have several lists in which way I want to go, and there's like Long Island celebrity list. That's like, Billy Joel, Joan Jett. And I was like, I put Bill O'Reilly on there. I was like, if I could get him and sit him down and talk to him, I would do it in a heartbeat.
I would talk to like Dee Snider. That's like one that I would be kind of starstruck over.
It's probably not as hard to get him as you would think.
I didn't think it was hard, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, okay.
He used to like live over like in Setauket, so I would see him like at the Dunkin' Donuts over there. So
I got a story about everyone. I have a friend whose mother hooked up with him back in the day. And actually, that friend of mine is the lead singer of a very popular Long Island band, but I don't want to blow up his spot.
Well, we'll talk about that off air. That would be part 3 of the podcast. 2 of these parts are not actually going to be recorded, but this is, and I don't want to talk about those Long Island celebrities. I want to talk about you, Chris Enriquez.
Oh, thanks.
And the way we know you mostly, and most people know of you, of all the bands you've been in, and it's actually, I have sort of a bio on you, and there's a lot of kind of things I forgot about, and a lot of things you filled in for, a lot of things you've done. We'll definitely get to that. But before we get into that, I want to talk about your day job, what you do now, as far as you work for Revolver.
Yes. Yeah. So I work at Revolver and on the business end of things. So, it's more like my title over there is brand partnership manager. So basically what my job is, to break it down, is if there's a new Slayer record coming out on Nuclear Blast Records, I have to sort of be on top of my game and try to reach out to the label to try to get them to promote across our website and our magazine before, one of our competitors does. And so every day I have to sort of know, I have to sort of maintain my relationships with record labels to know what new releases are coming out every day and try to stay on top of that. Like,
how do you do that? Like via like email or just like phone call? Like how does that even work?
When I first started, I guess, as you learn as you go along, but the long story short is I developed a lot of relationships with a lot of labels at this point, because I've been doing it for about 5 or 6 years now. So you just kind of have to stay in touch with people and get on their mailing list. It's quite simple, and you see in 2 months they have a Dillinger Escape Plan record coming out. So who should we put on the front cover? And, they're actually going to be on our December-January issue. They're breaking up, and
You guys are still printing?
We're still in print, and we're doing that because there's not many. We're one of the only American heavy metal hard rock magazines.
My favorite.
Exists.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah.
And real quick, I remember reading a story on our first guest, Daryl Palumbo, and he was talking about his influences, and he mentioned George.
Oh yeah,
Mind Over Matter, and like I just remember reading it, just thinking like, this is so cool. Revolver magazine, Long Island, like
it's like it's in Revolver.
Yeah, it's official as fuck.
It's official.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
He talked about George and Revolver, and I think premiered the first track that I think you're on.
Yeah, I'm not on that track. Everybody thinks I'm on. There was a lot of like written up. Oh, this is George. Even Artie Shepherd. Like
I thought so.
My friends,
everyone thought
like,
so.
It sounds like, but it's not. I know I recorded for them. I hope I made the cut. Daryl had mentioned that I was on it, but you know how Glassjaw, they're very secret about everything. So you think you get the phone call and let you know, or I can get an advanced copy, but it's just the way it is with them. Everything's very like secretive. So
we can get into that later, because I did try out for them a number of times.
I know I saw your videos on YouTube.
Yeah, they existed, and it was funny because that, I know we want to stick in some sort of format here, but
do your thing.
It's relatable. I interviewed Daryl for a Revolver podcast when he was playing in Color Film in the city, and sort of like off the record when the interview was over. This is actually not that long ago. He had mentioned that they needed a new drummer, and this record that is coming out soon was already finished at that point. Yeah. So Daryl had me learn a few songs and wanted me to videotape them and send them to him and Beck. Right. And after I didn't make the cut for it might have been the second time. Maybe I exaggerated. It was the second time. I'm like, well, these videos are kind of cool, and I worked hard on them, so I just put them on YouTube.
Yeah, it's very cool.
And I didn't see the videos. So you were playing to what, the new songs or the old songs?
The songs I think I put up were old songs.
Okay.
Like stuff from Worship and Tribute.
Cool. Yeah. So like you said, you guys are still printing?
So we're still printing, and again, yeah, because we're the last sort of. You don't really see too many hard rock or heavy metal bands these days on the front covers of Rolling Stone. There's literally like 5 bands left. Foo Fighters. I don't even know if they would put Black Sabbath on a front cover at this point. Certainly not Judas Priest. It's like it's very sparse. So we're kind of trying to carry the mantle or carry the torch, so to speak, for hard rock and heavy metal and sort of everything that falls underneath that. And
how realistic is keeping paper into the future? Like, where do you see it? Do you see it just continuing?
I think it's different for everybody because, again, like, if we don't have a lot of competition around here, so or just in the world.
Hit Parader.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. That was like the 80s, I think.
On the web, it's different, so you'd think, web is easier. It's actually more competitive.
Oh, absolutely.
Online for us because everyone's doing
That's a
it.
good point.
We have a legacy and a name, but if you're in an airport traveling or if you're just bored at Barnes & Noble's, you don't have any choices if you want to read about this kind of stuff. So so it works out for us.
I used to buy Spin all the time. I used to read before like the internet obviously took over, but like I would buy the shit out of any music magazine and I would read all of it. And now I'm like filled with like useless knowledge that Google ruined my game. Like I was the man for like a minute. People would text me, be like, what's the name of that band? And I'd be like, say no more, fam. And then from there, like now it's like everyone could just Google, and I'm like,
dude, I'm going to test you out for the next 2 or 3 weeks. I'm not going to Google certain things. I'm going to text you, and you better come through, man.
Stump the Hoyas.
Stump the Hoyas. But you did online stuff for Revolver. That was watching a bunch of videos. You were great. You were doing interviews. It was a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Are you doing that anymore, or is that
I'm not
done?
doing that anymore. This is an interesting story. I started working at the company in 2014, right around a time when people were getting laid off and a lot of people were leaving. So,
So you got hired around that time?
I got hired in 2014.
Geez, so how did that work if people are getting laid off and you're getting in?
They needed help over there, and I showed up at a time like it was sort of like 6 months when I showed up where they were still thriving. And then very quickly I started noticing people getting let go, people leaving. So I was very lucky that I showed up in that last sort of open window, so to speak, where the company was still doing well. I mean, it was funny, like 2 months into my job, I was in LA at an award show. Guns N' Roses were headlining. And like, I'm helping run the thing.
At that point in time, you're
like
thinking
crazy.
to yourself, like, this is the right job for me.
I was really happy. And at that point, a lot of folks who had been there for a while, because the company...
Was Josh with you?
Josh Bernstein?
Yeah.
You know Josh?
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, it's a funny thing is Josh Bernstein, who's a very well-known guy in the industry, started the Revolver Golden Gods Awards. The Golden Gods Awards, had been on VH1, Palladia, a couple different channels, MTV2.
Mm-hmm.
He tried to hire me to be his assistant. I show up, I get hired, and I show up, and he's gone. And then 3 months later, I get promoted, and I replace the guy. It was weird. So and it happened so quickly because it was almost like they didn't have anybody left to work with that knew the world. I mean, the Revolver was owned by a corporation at the time, so we're talking about like guys in suits that just want to know how much money you're bringing in. They don't understand the music or what it's for.
Or the love
they don't care.
Yeah.
They just want to see,
you see the number.
In. Yeah. So I kind of stepped up and easily convinced these guys in, I'm going to call them suits, that I could turn things around. The company was not doing very well. So
did you feel that way, or did you just figure this is like something you should try?
I figured it out quickly that there was something wrong. I was really excited in the beginning because when you're, at a job for 2 months and then you're suddenly in LA surrounded by like all these rock stars, at an award show that's being...
And for people like us, like music is our life. Like this is like, oh shit, like I could do like, at that point, like music is turning into your career, which is amazing.
Yeah, it happened really quickly too. I was really kind of wide-eyed at that moment, but then like I said, like 6 months into the job, once I started seeing people dropping like flies, I obviously started to question what the hell's going on around here, and I figured it out pretty quickly. And oddly enough, like I was sort of like the main dude. There was a point in time when I was the only full-time employee for like a couple of weeks working for Revolver. And
that's amazing.
Yeah, and it was weird. It was kind of like being a kid in a toy store. I figured out, oh, we have a video department, because we were run by the same corporation that owned Guitar World, a lot of instrument magazines, Bass Player, Keyboard magazine. We were the only lifestyle media outlet. They had this video department downstairs that they were using for like tutorials. So it'd be like Marty Friedman from Megadeth would come in and show people how to play Countdown to Extinction or whatever.
Nice.
At that point, I went on our YouTube channel to sort of get back to what you were saying, George. Yeah. And I noticed we hadn't had any video interviews on there for like 6 months or something. So I just went to my boss and said, "Hey, you know what? Let me do this."
Yeah.
So I put myself on camera, didn't know what I was doing. And, quickly at that, we had a new editor come on board. She had a lot of connections. And so we had a legacy too. So it wasn't hard.
Who was the first person that you talked to?
That's a good question. I can't remember actually, but very early on. I mean, it was like Papa Roach and Disturbed.
Yeah. I saw
new metal bands.
Your progression almost.
Yeah.
Because when we were talking about this with music, and can appreciate when people tell you the truth, and I could see you stiffer in the beginning and getting better and more comfortable. But I was just like at work listening to a bunch of it, and I was like, oh, he's really good, and I like that idea. I think we talked about this on the podcast with Artie Shepherd, which is your Ben mate, was kind of doing something that you have no business doing.
Yeah,
and
then you just jump in. I mean, that's music. That's everything we've ever done.
That's what you said on that episode. Our second episode was, you said success comes when you do something that you have no business doing. Like you just jump in, and you're like
often.
Yeah, you're like, man, this seems like it's going to be
really
hard to do.
It.
Fuck it, let's do it.
A lot of people don't have that opportunity because, you get fired if you fuck up. So, I don't know. It's hard for me to watch those interviews because I didn't know what I was doing.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Even doing this, I think, you learn like just sort of like, forget about who you're interviewing. You learn like sort of like how to talk to people in a certain way, talking over people, filling it, because when you're nervous, you just start saying things, off the top of your head. I think you learn how to stay calmer. And as you listen to podcasts and interviews, you pick up on what's annoying.
I'm about to jump out a window with my Americano that I drank. That's how hyped up I am.
But you had a tougher gig because you have to sort of figure out how to face a camera.
The cameras.
And be interesting in that way where you do a podcast, we can sort of slouch and it could do whatever. I can lean and do and be comfortable as I want. Me and Sam were talking about this because
you said he was going to bring a camera or some shit, and I was thinking like, holy shit, I have to sit up the whole time now, and I'm going to like look back, and I'm going to look like the fattest.
Said he was going to bring a camera.
Didn't you say?
I did not.
You didn't. Who the fuck did you say wanted to film it?
I'll tell you off the air because we had an offer to be filmed.
Oh,
okay, but it was not. His name is Chris, but not this Chris.
I'd be funny, like, I just like walk around with a cameraman.
Yeah, because I'm thinking, like, why the fuck is he trying to film shit?
I got my own, like, I'm trying to pitch my own reality show.
But back to this, Chris. I mean, it really is like a skill to talk, but to be on camera, to keep it going. And band members don't always want to give up. They're not always good at talking, and you're trying to draw it out of them. And I was watching your videos. I'm like, now at this, later video, 3-4 videos in that I watched, I was like, he's really good. You were talking to Dave Mustaine. We have a Megadeth question.
Yes.
We'll get to that eventually.
Oh man, that was interesting. But I did a Q&A with Dave Mustaine in front of 250 people at St. Vitus on stage, and also it was being broadcasted on Twitch, which is, if you don't know, is a really big video gaming website. And they have different channels. They were working. They had they used to broadcast some concerts and things like that because the gaming lifestyle kind of is applicable to a lot of metalheads. Sure. Like to play video games, stuff like that. But yeah, I like talking to people about music in general. So I'm one of those sort of dorky dudes like that when I'm at a bar instead of like getting, well, I partied a lot, but what I mean is I could sit down and talk to a guy at the bar about albums for
Me
2
too.
or 3 hours. And when I lived in Long Island, I would do that and hang out in the parking lot after the show and talk to dudes about music for hours. So I kind of treated a lot of these guys that way. And I think by doing that, it makes the other person comfortable. So if you're talking to Dave Mustaine or some giant rock star, if you sort of take that approach, a lot of interviews you sometimes see these guys talk like they're like wrestling dudes, and they have this like weird persona and a weird voice.
Yeah.
They don't talk to you like you're just hanging out with the guy. So I was just trying to take that approach. And I wasn't great, but I don't feel like I'm that good either now, but I got more comfortable with it.
But it's something that you're passionate about. It's
it
like
shouldn't
music.
be hard.
And when you talk to people whose music you're not really a fan of, like how hard is that?
It's actually better because you're not nervous.
Okay.
So, and in a way, that this guy in front of you is a big deal to someone in like whatever, like his band's huge in middle America. But if you're you've done your research, he's got a new record coming out, what he's done. It's just easier to talk to the guy and be more matter of fact because you don't really want to fan out, and you don't have the urge to. I've had a few moments where I had the urge to. Dave Mustaine is a good example of that.
It's like, wait, you wrote Rust in Peace. That's cool, man.
But when I watched you do it, and I know you for many years, what I got from it was how you are. You're not a person who would disrespect somebody in their music. So I've seen interviews where people are just kind of smug at the person they're not into. That interviewer is thinking about their audience and how they got to kind of fuck with this guy a little bit, be a little smug, be a little smarter than who they're asking to talk to. And, I know your musical taste, and you're going to wind up interviewing people who you might not appreciate the music, but the way you are, the way I've known you for these years, you're a person who is respectful and can find like the good in people.
Yeah.
Like everybody knows that about you and like who you are and like how you are. So watching you do interviews, I'm like, oh, this kind of makes a lot of sense because you can kind of, make that person feel comfortable, which you did, and then draw out, a commonality and then think about their, that guy's fans and what they want to hear.
Yeah. I mean, it's like kind of like any business, I think. And my friends and I opened up a restaurant in Brooklyn. You're serving.
What's the name of it?
Montana's Trail House in Bushwick. Okay. Little plug there. But but you have to if you go to work, and we talked about this when we opened up the restaurant. You're not gonna throw Slayer on during dinner,
right?
I mean, maybe some people would like that, but you're serving an audience, or it's the same thing. The audience are your customers,
Yeah.
And you just have to do your job. You don't if you work at a restaurant, you don't like every meal that you're going to serve, but you have to serve that to the people that want it. So if I have David Drainman, for instance, from Disturbed, and no disrespect to him, he's actually a really nice guy.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan, and my music tastes. You can assume what I know me well enough to assume what I like and what I don't like. Yeah. He has a lot of fans out there, and they're sort of like, it's universal to know what fans might want to know about this guy, what kind of questions to ask him about his new record, who he's touring with, and things of that nature. So I think that's usually the approach you have to take if you're a host on Fuse or MTV or just any media outlet where you're not personally picking the guys. With this, you're personally picking who you want to talk to, which is, there's a beauty to that as well, because then there's an excitement, and a podcast can go on for 2 hours. These things got to sort of wrap it up, keep it 5 minutes or less.
Get out.
Yeah, and I learned that very quickly.
And that is kind of interesting because it's almost like harder because you don't have that warm up. You just like, like if you feel like you did a bad job in those 5 or 7 minutes, there is no making it up towards the end, or
like it got good, 30 minutes in. It's
yeah. Actually, I have a coworker that interviewed Lemmy on the phone before he died, and if he forgot to hit record or something, they call him back to try to do it again. That happened to me once with Doyle from the Misfits, and he actually let me do I did an interview with Doyle for a podcast that was maybe like at least 20 minutes, and the record button was never hit. and he agreed to do it again.
Wow.
That was horrible.
That's got to be
learning lessons.
Yeah. I think I did that maybe once, but it wasn't Doyle. So it's somebody else.
I did that only once, and it's right now.
We were actually just
Chris,
talking to ourselves.
Yeah. Well, we missed the first 90 minutes of the first
Yeah. And the part 3, which will be after this
part
whole
3,
thing.
definitely. So we got to figure out who that person was that he was talking about.
Yeah, no, but that's sort of, so when I was doing that, I had to come up with a lot of things for Revolver. I started this podcast. They never had one before that. I started, they always had somebody interviewing bands on YouTube, on their YouTube channel, but I sort of took that role on. And then one thing I'm really proud of is around 2015, we had skipped the Golden Gods, the award show. We had one in 2014 when I started with Guns N' Roses, as I mentioned.
I remember the show.
Yeah, that was a huge one. And in 2016, it took a long time. It was a lot of hard work, but I actually brought it back and I fucking booked the bands. I booked Megadeth, Anthrax. I'm just sort of Ace Frehley. Actually got Ace Frehley through a friend of mine, Bill Meese, who's also a Long Island hardcore guy. He's Black Label Society's manager in Ace Frehley as well.
Right.
So I booked the bands, and I also had the trophies designed. I had to order the black carpet we do a black carpet instead of a red carpet. Everything, things I had never done before.
And you have a studio, I mean, like an audience, right?
There's a live audience. It was at Webster Hall. We sold tickets just like it was a concert.
Okay.
In that time period, I did a lot, and it was rewarding, but it also took a toll on me, and I had to take a break for a while. And I left. I stopped working for a few months, and now I'm back. And we have a way bigger team now, and somebody else bought the company, and it's sort of like a different brand, a different beast at this point.
And you did the Loudwire Awards.
I did with Josh Bernstein, who you mentioned. I left Revolver, got a job opportunity to do the same thing I was doing at Loudwire, which is basically I hate to say it, but they're the biggest on the web. Revolver had a magazine, but so over there was more focused on the business side, selling advertising, selling event sponsorships, and not on camera. So I haven't been on camera doing stuff for 10 or 11 months now, which is fine.
Okay. So it's all just strictly online.
Yeah. So if you're online reading, a story about body counts or something, and you see banner ads for a new, the new Glassjaw record or whatever, I reach out to the labels and sort of make sure that they're getting presence on there. But I had helped book the award show with Josh, and it was great. It was it was just a few months ago, and why am I fucking drawing a blank? Power Trip was great. Who
they do the song with?
Jamie Josta from Hatebreed.
That's right.
It was on Access TV.
Their record's one of the best records of this
Avenged
year.
Sevenfold headline. That's what I was trying to.
Power Trip?
Yeah.
Power Trip record. Yeah, their record is one of my favorite records of the year. They're just
it was
throwback
cool.
thrash.
We tried to mix up younger bands and big bands. So we had your Avenged Sevenfolds and Chad Smith and Sammy Hagar were there and stuff like that.
Right.
But we tried to do something a little different and get the younger bands, because that's what's important, and that's what we're trying to do more now at Revolver.
The passing of the torch.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's no disrespect, but that's what's inspiring now about being in the business. We're trying something new. It's kind of freaking people out a little bit, but we're doing a little less of the typical thing. And we want people to get fed newer bands, because that's how we're going to keep it going. But Power Trip is a fantastic band, and we had them perform. And they're a kind of band that you'd see at St. Vitus.
Yeah.
And so we put them on TV, and they were nominated. They beat out Metallica. It was fan voted for Best Metal Song of the Year. It's all wasn't
makes sense.
Yeah, it was great. And Jamie Josta, who's kind of a veteran at this point, got up and did a Motorhead song with them. So it was fun. It was just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, he's got a great podcast too.
Yeah,
Jamie Josta's
got a great podcast.
Yeah. I just heard the Justin Brandon one that I sent you. So very good.
Oh, I gotta check that out.
Oh, it's good.
Yeah,
good stuff. So
that's awesome.
It's on the list. Jamie Josta and Justin Brennan.
Yeah,
super smart business guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But just out of curiosity, you said so like the people, it's fan voted.
Yep.
And what is it? Just through the website?
The way we actually handled the voting this time was we worked with Apple Music. So streams.
Oh.
It was a number of things.
Interesting.
The streams online fed into the voting. But we kind of did it this way. We sent ballots to a lot of folks in the music industry. And that counted for a certain amount percentage.
Mm-hmm.
And then internally, we voted with our own team at the office.
And how big is that team?
At Loudwire, I mean, God, there's probably maybe 15 of us.
Okay.
And then we also had fan votes. And so we took the three different, music industry, fans, and internally. And all of that sort of helped us figure out.
I love the Apple Music thing. That's great. That's a really good way to do, because it's pure.
This was totally pure. I don't want to comment on like the older award shows, but people can speculate for themselves. This one was like 100% like Power Trip won based on people that voted for him, and that's the way it should be. So, it's really like a proud moment to know that everybody was getting their due respect.
I was always curious why award shows weren't fan based, like fan oriented, but I guess it's an industry thing. It's like it's a promotion technique for a lot of people, that are in the know and in the industry, and it's like a self-congratulation thing. But it's not fan, driven in the way that we think it would be. I think a lot of people think it is,
because I mean, like, just that ultimate fuck up with the Grammys, which was Metallica losing out to Jethro Tull.
Right, or what goes on with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and there's just a group that you don't know. Yeah. They vote people in, but I think a lot of people don't realize that. They just think it's an award show. It's like, America has voted, and this is who gets the Grammy.
Yeah,
but it's not.
It's a lot of different things that factor in. I know I can't speak for all of them, but I know with the Grammys, there's a committee that's made up of people from labels and different music media outlets, and I imagine they all sort of factor in, like kind of like what I was saying, like this percentage of the industry counts towards who wins, and this percentage of I don't even know if they go to fans. I don't know how they do it, but
if that's who's voting or counting into who gets these awards, it's political.
Oh yeah, totally.
If it's fans, it's not political. It's just a democratic.
Absolutely. That's why I like the Apple Music thing, because it's like you're counting people hitting play on that fucking stream. So
we wanted to make it count.
And I just quick on that Grammy fuck up with Jethro Tull, because I heard Brian Slagle from Metal Blade say that's like after that fuck up, that's when they involved him, and I think that's when he like joined like the Grammy committee, because they were trying
on the Grammy committee.
Yeah.
So are a few people at work. And a few people, like you'd be surprised. Like, I know a guy at Nuclear Blast that's on the Grammy committee, and Brian Slagle from Metal Blade, but which is odd because they're metal guys and you don't really see much metal
at all.
Yeah, it's like the same thing, but I don't know. I don't know if we're doing another one. We'll see, but this one I was really proud of, and it's still fresh. It was just a few weeks ago.
Absolutely, and I guess it's just one of those things that you probably almost feel like you could sleep for a week after it's done, right?
It's hectic, man. I mean, literally.
So many pieces together. And
it makes you not intimidated by your heroes because they piss you off the whole time. Like, the amount of guest lists and, everyone has a deadline of when they need to get their guest lists in.
I've seen your status, man.
The day of, you're just like...
Does it diminish... Like when you're in a band, when you start a band, you're trying to get away from your cubicle job. This is the antithesis. You're trying to, I mop the floor at the deli, and what makes life okay is when I play with my friends at night. But now your life is engulfed in both.
Yeah.
And does it diminish anything, like as far as playing music, or even just, what you see as like the end result or the future or maybe a goal of being in a band? Like, how does that color your band life?
It's had its moments where it was bad, and like actually like I'm not weird about talking about, but that's why I'm clean now, because
Yeah.
I had a hard time dealing with putting on award shows, having to stay on top of my day job, which is kind of part of that, but not really. It was like a bunch of things.
Yeah.
And then trying to be in a couple bands at the same time. And, you know, you're constantly stressed out, but also around just a lot of people drinking and
Right.
doing shit around you all the time. So, you know, at this point, because I've been doing it for a while and I've cleaned myself up, I'm able to sort of figure out how to, you know, not to get as stressed out about certain things because I've done it already. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like we bounce, and I'm also lucky now because I've done it long enough where my boss trusts that if I go on the road, I can do my job from the road. So I don't, you know, I don't have to be in the office. I've kind of gotten to a point where I could sort of like pick and choose my schedule. And so I could divide it up now, whereas it used to be more of like a 9 to 5 thing. Now I could, you know, if I want to work at 8 o'clock at night and just get it done, as long as it gets done, it's cool, you know.
Because they build that trust. Just
Yeah.
as a little side note, little asterisk, we're going to be interviewing Gavin from Burn.
Ooh, yeah, that's
And
my mentor.
I know, and I know you had a little bit to do with that because you sort of like clued him into the first episode, and then he reached out, and we're going to do this, but you train with him.
Yeah, Gavin, I got to tell you, so Gavin, who plays in Burn and legendary New York hardcore dude, you know, he's an icon to me. I run into him a lot when I was, you know, I live in the city now. I've been living there for a while. We run into him a lot and talk about music with him because I looked up to him. I looked up to his band, and a lot of bands that I loved listening to were influenced by Burn. So I also learned that he was a martial arts trainer and that he was sober for a long time. And for years, he tried to get me to train with him. And he was working out of, this is Muay Thai training.
Yeah.
They do some jiu-jitsu, which I dabbled in a little bit, but I'm more of a Muay Thai guy. Mm-hmm. What finally got me to train with him is that I was sort of struggling with my substance abuse and alcoholism and stuff like that. And I don't remember how, you know, he invited me down to his new gym. He opened up a gym in Bushwick, Brooklyn, called Physical Culture Collective, which actually we just did a documentary on Revolver's website about Gavin and the gym. And
I think we saw it.
Yeah, we were
very well done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was glad to sort of, I wasn't around when they did that, so I can't take credit for it, but I'm glad that someone like Gavin, who's known more locally, was given that sort of attention for people outside of New York to know what, you know, what he's done, what he's doing. But yeah, he was really gracious and took me in, let me try out the gym for a month, hoping that maybe that would help me sort of get through whatever I was going through, and it worked. I got really fit and started focusing on my health, and at that point I was 7 months clean as a result of joining that gym and being around him and just becoming friends with him and asking him for advice. And I'm still there now, and I constantly recommended the place to a lot of friends of mine.
But do you like try and drop that into conversation all the time? Like you'll be like, "Oh, my elbow hurts." I'm like, "Why?" I'm like, "Oh, I was training with Gavin from Burn. You know, I was just, you know, working out." And they're like, "Oh, he's teaching you guitar." You're like, "Nah, we were sparring."
No,
I mean, just work that into the conversation.
You know what? Maybe indirectly that's one of those things where you just sort of drop a name.
Yeah.
But I feel like that connection happened because of you, and that's kind of like what you've always done. Like even everything you're talking about and everything, you know, we're kind of like touching on here. You're a bit of a connector, and you like to sort of share the wealth.
I like
when
that.
you have something, you connect people and you try and bring in, like you just got a little bit, you know, we're actually recording, there's no video, but you get a little bit more passionate and your body language changed when you talked about the younger bands and getting them on these things more than when you were talking about some of your favorite bands like Megadeth.
Yeah.
And that's like who you are. It's just the connecting.
I think, I don't know. I just think, especially with Long Island, you know, the scene that we sort of grew up in, a lot of some bands got really big, and some bands probably didn't care about that. But I don't know. I've always sort of just been fascinated by the stories of bands. I was always big on biographies. So like I was a huge Nirvana fan, and I
same.
Really
I think that's why
liked-
we're here.
Yeah, I like knowing their story, and the stories of a lot of these huge bands that are legendary, their stories aren't that different from the local bands that we grew up in, and specifically, I think with Long Island, I feel like it's very unrecognized, and when I go out and tour and play with other, not always smaller bands, like Power Trip's kind of a bigger band now, but like in the grand, not mainstream, but I like to do whatever I can to sort of like elevate bands that I think deserve more recognition. And I've tried in my own ways to do that for the bands that I play. And, I haven't really gotten to, and I'm not saying that, that I want any of my bands to be mainstream, but, I just think it's sort of a driving force to try to take what you're doing as far as you can. And I think anyone that says they don't care about the recognition part of it is lying. I mean, it doesn't mean you want to play at Madison Square Garden, but you don't want to play to an empty room. You'd rather there were 100 people in that room versus 10 people.
It's you play in the basement then with no one. But
and you got to help each other out.
You invite people in. This is a conversation that we're having, and it wants to be entertaining. Most conversations are not. We're trying to think of people out there who would enjoy what we say, and that's part of when you ask people to listen to you. Yeah, and that's kind of like why I got excited about this podcast, because there's a Long Island hardcore documentary that's not out yet. From what I understand, there's a guy working on it now, editing it, so it'll finally see the light of day. But there's not a lot of stuff out there to document or promote what's going on here still. It's like that. Like I said, a lot of bands got big and went on to do their things, but only and I'm not talking shit, but they kind of go off and do their own thing, and that's it. I think it's important to, I loved when I was a kid and Nirvana would do an interview on Headbangers Ball, and they would talk about the Melvins and L7 and Mudhoney and turn you on to that. I think that's kind of missing now. And when I was younger, I was definitely way more competitive, and now I'm a lot more of somebody that wants to sort of work with other people and try to help each other out, especially if you have those connections or the ability to do that. And I think that's what St. Vitus is doing too. And I'm really proud of those guys too. Absolutely. So any opportunity, I got yelled at once at Revolver a couple years ago because there was a page for up and coming bands, one page, and someone figured out that all the bands were from New York every time there was a new issue, and I got my hand slapped a little bit. That this is not a New York magazine, and you can't keep putting bands from New York on this page every issue. Oh, I didn't even know. So there's a page for that. That's interesting. There was. It's a different format now, but okay. Yeah. All right. I don't know. If more people helped each other out, the music that we all made and that we all make would be easier to access. More people would know about it. Yeah, everything helps too. And like you said, even with Nirvana, like you said, mentioning those bands, so many kids heard or watched those interviews and got into the Melvins because of Nirvana or anything like that. So it Sonic Youth. Yeah, definitely. So it's just everything. That's why I like podcasts, because somewhere someone's having a conversation right now, and they're going to say something that I'm not going to be able to hear, but I'm going to hit play, and I'm going to be in the middle of that conversation, and they're going to talk about someone that I've never heard, and I'm like, you know what? I have Spotify. I'm going to listen to it right now. Absolutely. And you had Daryl from Glassjaw on your first episode, so it's they have a new record coming out, and some kid listening to that might see that there's other episodes of this. How did that work out so good? Do you notice that? Because we didn't plan that. It's an accident. Yeah. I recorded that. Had that shit for a year. Late last year, but then it was just, I was going through a few different people I was going to do the podcast with, and then, finally me and Sam were going to do it. But I had the thing recorded, and then I put it up, and there was a lot of interest in it just because they started to ramp up to do things. And then everybody in the Glassjaw world fandom thinks everything is like a mystery, a scheme, so he dropped it right now because there's this. It was synchronicity. It was the ultimate synchronicity. It was so amazing. You got him on a very personal level
for a long period of time that I don't think Glassjaw fans are used to hearing. So that was so cool about the episode.
It was great because it was more like it took a little time to get together, but we actually did it in the afternoon because it was tough for us to get together at night. He lives in not far from here, and it was like, oh, we'll do it during the day, and it was nice because it was just me and him, and we could just like sort of hash things out, and it was comfortable. And then just by the time I could actually put it out, it was like sort of synchronicity into the time that they're putting their record out.
Yeah.
And I'm on their record. So there was a lot of like just nice, cross.
You sat on it for a while.
Synchronicity.
But yeah, I mean, just to wrap that up though, like you notice like once you show that you're not competitive with other bands, they want to help you out too. And that's a beautiful thing. You know what I mean? That's how you end up going on tour with this band from Georgia, or they want to book your band in Boston or whatever. I mean, it's always been that way, but I don't know, just for me personally, I can only speak on behalf of like my past. Like me and my bandmates in the past were very competitive. I think a lot of people are when they're teenagers playing shows because you don't really know how to behave. And so when you stick at it into your 20s or 30s, whether you become successful or not, you just learn how to behave better, and it makes it worth it, and it makes you want to keep doing it. So
I mean, competition is good. I mean, we talked about this on your podcast, and I was saying like, you play a show, you want to be better than the other bands.
Yes.
Like if I play with you, I want to be better than you.
Absolutely.
Right. But the difference is like maybe you get older and you start to understand like. That doesn't mean that you get off stage and you're brooding for the next week, or you hate everyone around you, or you wagging your finger at your drummer. You just it moves you forward. A lot of the insular thing about Long Island is like we were just competitive with each other. We wanted to be better than each other, but not in a way that was destructive. It moved each other forward, but you said well,
no, I'll say, I mean, that I think that's the way it should be.
Yeah,
but
speaking in general,
I think that's
in
the
general,
specific.
that's the way it should be. But I think also, I think at least from my own perspective, a lot of those. You definitely want to blow the other guy off the stage. That's without a doubt, and it's a great thing because it helps you become a better performer and a better songwriter and all that. But I think the problem for me, at least, was a lot of times not only was that happening in the environment in the late 90s, early 2000s, but there's also just a lot of beefing going on too. For me,
right? But it's like you win some, you lose some, and when you don't blow them off the stage, you're like, I sucked at that one. You fucking won that one, and it's fine, and you just move on. I guess it's a mindset that not everybody has, but
for me to this day, like I play everything that I'm like anyone who is in a band that I'm friends with and they release something, I hit play because I want to see where the game is at, and I want to get inspired. I want to hit that play, and especially if someone plays like the kind of shit that we play, I'm just like, oh shit, all right, now we got to like step our game up and like go. So it's like this constant, it's nothing mean. It's just like,
no, of course not.
I got to I'm like, holy shit. Like, like when I would hear like a Small Arms Dealer record, I'm like, God damn.
Right. You're like,
I'm
man.
Holy shit, now I really have to write
like,
songs.
Oh man, Iron Sheik wrote the perfect pop punk song.
Yeah. So it's like, now it's like, okay, now let's just go back in.
Absolutely.
So, and listen, by no means do I know that, obviously we don't try, but in my head, I'm thinking for me personally, as long as I hit play and I'm very satisfied with it, then that's fine. If anyone else likes it, that's the gravy.
You rip off your friends too.
Absolutely.
I ripped off Daraja a lot growing up.
Really?
I loved his drum. I still do, and I've told him. I've asked him to teach me a few things, but he just did some wild shit. But like, you could also, and that's the cool thing is you inspire your friends too. Like, oh shit, I don't know how to do that. Can you teach me how to do that? That's a cool thing about a community,
Yeah, and it's approachable.
Yeah.
You're in maybe a competitive environment, but it's also approachable.
Yeah. I always knew that guy was better than me though. That's how I felt around that guy. But
Artie agrees.
Thanks, yeah.
Artie agrees to your face, but deep down he thinks you're better than Daraja.
Deep down he's a softie.
So we talked about your day job and some of the things you're interested in, but I want to talk about your bands a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think maybe the last time I saw you I could be wrong, but was it at the Jason Rosenthal
Yeah,
tribute?
I think so. Definitely.
Okay.
I haven't seen you since then. Yeah.
And that's, the mostly where I know you, the band I've connected with you the most. And I got to be honest, I was a little confused about some of the things. Like your band, like On the Mind of Princes was back. They were doing shows. There was it reunion shows or were you back together?
Mostly reunion shows, but the last time we got together, it was like our third time doing reunions. So we tossed around some ideas about jamming, but it never really, like on new stuff, writing new stuff, but it never came into fruition.
What year was that? Like 2009 or something?
Well, I think we did our first reunion in 2006, and then we did a reunion in 2009, a reunion in 2012. I think that was the last one.
That was the Vitus one, right?
We did a Vitus one, and then
because Keith,
yeah.
I'm sorry, Keith and I walked in and we had no idea that you guys were there.
Really?
We were just like, oh wow, I guess they're playing tonight.
Well, we did too.
What are you, Artie Shepherd?
Yeah,
making him feel.
Oh, I know. No,
we had no idea.
No,
we
I know
were just
why.
in Brooklyn. Jeez,
are you talking about the Texas the Reason show?
I don't remember, man. I'm telling you.
We did it was the Revelation Records like 25th anniversary.
Okay.
So we played at Irving Plaza with it was a sick show. It was with Underdog and Tex the Reason.
Yeah.
It's like a weird lineup of, you know what I mean, of like New York bands.
Right.
Of course we were the openers. But we also did a show with Texas the Reason, like a pre-show at St. Vitus. That's what
right.
It has to be, yeah.
And then we did a headlining show. We played 3 shows in a row in New York, but and then we were supposed to headline this Long Island Hardcore Festival. I don't know what it was called. Maybe it was just called that. And that's around the time that we were tossing around ideas to maybe actually write new stuff, try to give it another shot. And ultimately we had canceled and,
because
it didn't work out.
One of my bands was on that show.
Yeah, I remember.
And then it was like a little unclear to me. Like I didn't know why it was canceled exactly. It's like you kind of like it's canceled, you move on. Then unfortunately Jason passed away.
That's right. Yeah.
And then I never like really we talked a little bit, we did some stuff together, but I never really got the full story. I don't know how, that I don't know how much you want to get into it,
no,
but
it's fine.
It's kind of
it's
Jason passed and then like what happened with why things were canceled, why did he kind of end all that stuff,
right? And
then where you were at.
Well, the truth is, like, we actually have no idea what was wrong with him or what happened to him. He was like not the healthiest person, and I think it was a heart attack. I was, you know what I mean? We weren't really that close. Unfortunately, we played in bands together for a long time, and we had a lot of great times, but like we were never that tight. Like we didn't it was a point in time when I guess we were, but very different backgrounds. So when it was like Friday night and it was time to go out with your buddies, we didn't really do that
right
often. And at the time when he had passed away, he was living in Austin, Texas, and I had no idea that he had heart complications. And so, I don't think we never really got an actual reason as to like there was no name of like a thing that he had to, it was very sort of, he had heart complications and he passed away. And when that happens to you at like 33, you just know that, obviously he couldn't have been that healthy. You know what I mean? But there was nothing like a lot of assumptions that he had overdosed and things that there's no like solid, and I'm not even like holding that back. Like I have no idea.
That's what I heard at first. And then you hear sort of the after story and like, it probably wasn't that. And you hear,
I don't think it was. I think it was, I'm just to speak for myself. Like I had my own issues with substance abuse and stuff like that, and Jason liked to have a good time and party. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is common amongst musicians. And the one thing I'll say about Jay is like it would be odd to hear him be like, "Oh, I don't feel good, I should go to the hospital." or I should go see a doctor. He just wasn't that kind of guy. He always was looking for the party and having a good time. And I hope that's not disrespectful to say, but that's the way he enjoyed to do things. You know what I mean?
It could have happened to anyone. I mean, I was doing the same thing in the 90s.
Yeah.
I was definitely fucked up. I have like 17 years clean.
Congrats. I didn't know that.
Yeah. 98.
That's awesome.
98 was the last time. So it just could happen. Like I OD'd and I woke up with Narcan.
Yeah.
I got lucky.
It's like we talked about it earlier. It's common. And Jason didn't really have, I don't know if he ever had health insurance, or if he did, he probably didn't have it for long periods of time. He was always sort of like, he had a job for a few months and then didn't have it. He was sort of like, I feel like if we were famous, like his life probably really wasn't that different from like a Kurt Cobain or something. He had like a pretty, I feel bad, but he had kind of like a fucked up life. I grew up in a really good household with good parents. He definitely did not. He lived out of his car for a while. He didn't have parents to call up and be like, I need some money. He
was my roommate. I actually lived with Jason.
You did,
yeah.
But he was a great. Just on that, I don't. It's still a mystery, and it was horrible, and we didn't really get along all the time that well, and but people liked the band enough to warrant doing reunion shows, and I think when you're still playing music, or if you want to keep playing music and you have an audience to play to, it's an easy thing to just say, let's do that.
Absolutely.
And after a while, if you're doing reunion shows so much, it kind of feels like silly after a while. Like maybe we should, sometimes it's better to leave it. Actually, there are definitely bands that have gotten back together and not written the best material, but we tried, and he was.
Do you feel at the live shows like you guys were killing it, like the material, pulling it off and that stuff? Yeah.
We were kind of a sloppy band. We weren't the tightest band. But
the music lent itself to
but
that.
It felt it felt awesome.
Feeling.
It felt great. There's something. I don't know if you guys feel this way about your own bands, like not to cheapen other bands you've been in, but I feel like everyone has that one band that we're in.
Yeah.
That is sort of unparalleled, and even in 2009 through 2012, all those reunion shows, every time we did those shows, it was different than other bands I was playing with at the time. It's hard, it was a different energy, and it,
of course,
I want to say it was better, but
the people, kids, they grew up watching those shows later on, like that, everyone remembers On the Mighty Princess. You guys definitely left one hell of a fingerprint on Long Island. So.
Thanks. Yeah.
I know you had like a thing, like you were on Revelation, but you wound up on Revelation, but you had a thing with Drive Through Records. You were going to maybe be on. You were kind of poised to do a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And I know it sort of stopped. But maybe you can explain a little bit like what you went through to get to where you were.
So, On the Mighty Princess started in 1997, which is crazy to think that was 20 years ago. Is that 20 years ago? Yeah.
Sure is.
It's pretty wild. So, I guess the way to sort of summarize, what that was all about is the band got signed. There was a first full length that was, self-released. And then the band started getting record label interest right around the time that other bands like Taking Back Sunday and Brand New and Thursday, all that started happening, and we had been doing our thing, I think we had maybe a year or two on like some of those bands, so we I remember Thursday was the first band that got signed to a bigger label, and then right after that, I think in that sort of lineage, we were sort of next, and we had been touring already at that point and sort of getting a local following and playing with other bands on labels. And so that buzz, I guess, sort of, we got Equal Vision, all those sort of Revelation, those sort of like household names in the hardcore scene. We started getting like a lot of those people hitting us up. And it was very apparent that something was happening because Thursday wasn't playing at the local bar anymore. They were playing at Irving Plaza.
Right.
And then other bands that we were friends with were starting to get looked at. And it's it took us a while because we were kind of dysfunctional. Like we didn't we didn't always get along that well, but like we recognized
That's a band.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we recognized that like whatever it was that we were doing, people liked it more than other bands that we were in before that, which is kind of interesting because I never experienced that before, and I don't think they did either. I don't think that was the first time any of us played in a band where people cared about it on a level where people knew the words and they were coming up to us afterwards and wanted to talk to us. Like that never happened to any of us before. And I was 18 when I joined that band. So
like any band that gets popular, it's like a new experience. It's just so
absolutely
crazy.
On the Might of Princes got a lot of record deal offers right around the time that everyone else was, and it was right before a lot of those bands that are really big now got signed. And I can tell you that because at the time, Brand New and Taking Back Sunday and Coheed and Cambria were opening up for us. We took a lot of these guys. We took Taking Back Sunday, I think, on their first road trip.
Coheed was Jersey, right?
Coheed was Woodstock, but they opened up for us at like a university, and then they played with us here in Long Island and opened up for us. So like, a lot of these bands, they're on the radar of each other, but nobody was like, I mean, these guys, Coheed played Madison Square Garden headline, this is the kind of shit that was not, anticipated. So for us, it was weird being caught up in that and sort of going back to what we were saying, not being prepared for that and not anticipating it and being dysfunctional at the same time and being teenagers and whatnot.
Right.
It was just, it was strange. So funny story about Jason, like there was not Facebook or maybe there was Friendster or maybe I think at some point while we were a band, MySpace started, but he got phone calls when he worked at Borders Books and Music from like record labels. They'd like find the number to where he worked at, and he would get like phone calls from. I got a phone call from Victory while he was like a cashier at Borders. And I don't even know how they found his number there, but it was like that. And we ended up while we were offered a deal from Victory and Revelation, and we were sort of contemplating between the two. Victory at the time, as you guys know, was more known for like metalcore.
Yeah, and like hardcore bands.
It was not what people know it to be today. So we thought that it was strange to do that because we knew them to have Earth Crisis and
Straight
Strife.
Edge.
We didn't know what they could do for us, even though Thursday already was sort of getting a lot of notoriety from doing that. But
Taking Back Sunday sort of changed that
directive.
That. Yeah. But
that was after the fact. We didn't know, so we didn't see that coming. So we kind of passed on Victory. And then while the Rev thing was happening, and this is where I'm careful of who I name because they're friends of ours from here, but I got a phone call from Christian McKnight that he had an RX Bandit show that he had promoted in the city who were on Drive-Thru, and he called me. I guess he had played us for the owners of the label, and this is a funny story. So, I immediately stopped whatever I was doing and drove into the city to meet with these two label owners, Richard and Stephanie, and I think they were leaving town the next day. So
it was just you.
It was just me because I handled all that shit. The other guys in my band, great guys, what they do. Jason was a good songwriter. Lou and Tommy are, great dudes. I mean, they were not, exactly the people that were going to go out and talk to record labels. I'm laughing because the idea of imagining that to me seems so bizarre to imagine any of those guys talking to a record label. So I kind of...
We're all glad you handled it.
Yeah.
So I was always handle that stuff. But I wanted it so bad that I set up a showcase and told them that if their flight, I'm thinking they're like, oh, if your flight's at 2 p.m. tomorrow, well, then I'll book time at a rehearsal studio in Midtown so we could play for you at 10 a.m. and I'll invite all my friends. So we played a showcase for drive-through like the next day, and I called all my friends. We had a show, and maybe like 30 people showed up at like 10 a.m. It's just a weird time to like play and like have energy.
Sure.
And
because I guess the 30 people do feed off the crowd.
Yeah.
And I think your band was one of those bands that definitely, worked better, and I'm sure the crowd
feed off of it.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and for all of us too. I mean, that's how it goes. Like, but it was funny because our friends were so excited because you feel like something like huge is going to happen.
Right.
So all that is like really exaggerated. But long and behold, a couple hours after we played for them, they called me up on my phone and expressed interest in signing us to the label, and had all these crazy promises of things they could do for us, things the labels tell bands to get.
Just out of curiosity, what like what?
Well,
like
at that
tours?
time, a lot of bands were on Warped Tour. They had buses. Mark Trombino was like the guy that was producing bands like Midtown and Jimmy Eat World and all that kind of stuff. So, I remember sort of just the promises being like, we'll get you on good tour packages, and
that's all you really want.
Yeah, you don't have to you don't have to drive yourself. You don't have to. I mean, this is when the music industry was really thriving.
Right.
You don't have to drive yourself. We'll get you a bus. We'll get you a driver. You can record with this dude that you want to record with. All sorts of shit. And I think it doesn't matter if I misquote. I mean, it was like I think they were like waving like 30-40 grand in front of us on top of all the shit. That was like the record advance.
Because an advance is weird. Is it like your money to put in your pocket?
I think it was. It was for recording. Okay. And then on top of we'll get you on the full packages.
30-40 grand is 14 times more than we've ever paid for recording it.
Sure. Yeah. Well, at the time, and I could tell you this, like I remember, like I knew what other bands' recording budgets were. So we. Ultimately, when we ended up on Rev, our recording budget was like $6,000, which today is a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I remember being jealous, and like hearing about other friends' bands that were recording, and Big Blue Meanie was the big studio. I think that's where Taking Back Sunday recorded their first full length on Thursday. Yeah. And you would hear
Sal.
Yeah, Sal. You would hear numbers of recording budgets that were definitely in the double digits.
Yeah.
Yeah, or like not 10, 15, 20,
right.
stuff like that.
$5,000 in Minor Matter.
I'm laughing at Artie's.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah. And at the time, it felt not enough.
It seems strange.
If someone gave you $5,000 to record right now.
Oh,
dude,
are you kidding me?
If someone gave me $5,000 to record, I would make I would be able to make Kid A by Radiohead with that money.
Yeah.
Right. Back then, it felt awesome the first time. The second time it went from 5,000 to 6,000, and we were like, what?
Yeah.
And then it just felt like not enough.
Well, it was funny because like that all that was happening, and when someone dangles money and all that shit in front of you, obviously that seems like the better choice. And we didn't have a manager, we didn't have any of that stuff. We didn't have like a team or a lawyer, and
they just had you.
The funny shit was that they wanted us to re-record our album "Where You Are, Where You Want to Be" with a new producer. They thought the front cover was a little silly because it's a picture of Jason and our friend Steve, who's this large dude running on the beach. They thought it was silly and it didn't match the music, and they thought the song structures could have been spruced up a little bit and the sound quality. So they really wanted to change us, and that was not anything we had discussed. It was a weird phone call. But we kind of that conversation turned into like, oh, you can pay off some of our credit card bills. Like we heard stories that like that Vagrant or one of those labels did that for Dashboard for that guy.
Vagrant.
So like,
actually.
maybe they'll take care of our debt and all this other stuff. And
it was actually Vagrant for Dashboard.
Yeah, they paid off Chris Caraba's credit card bills, and they said they would do that for Jason, and they just promised us a lot. So
it's a good deal.
Absolutely.
Like, especially like at that point, you're playing in bands. All you have is debt.
Yeah.
So if you just wipe away the debt,
you're not making money.
Then we'll re-record our first record.
yeah. You're not making money on the road, But so long story short, they promoted us on their site as if we were a drive-through band because we verbally agreed that we would do it. And we went on a tour. I think it was with Latterman, and the idea was that when we were on the West Coast, we would meet up with them at their mansion. They had a mansion at the time.
Wow.
That's what they said. Well, it's what bands that were on the label would tell us, like, oh, you got to check out their house. It's
was
like
it
a
like
mansion.
the hardcore mansion?
I'm sure it wasn't really a mansion. I'm sure it was just a nice house, but like to like some hardcore kid that just got signed, and
it's like a big
they're
house.
like, he's like, yeah. So it was exaggerated. But anyway, we were supposed to go there, sign the thing, and shit, man, we were shit talkers back then, and we started things with people that we shouldn't have started, and some of the bands on the label didn't like us, and they didn't want us to be on the label. So I had the unfortunate experience of having to explain that to my bandmates, and we went back home empty-handed, but it didn't end up so bad because we still had a record deal from Rev, and at the end of the day, I think we made the right decision. So,
right. So, to be clear, like, you were going to get signed by the label. Label wanted you, but there were other bands on the label you weren't cool with because of Long Island problems.
Yeah,
and then that kind of shifted.
Couldn't
get the deal.
We were saying this off record, but like we were sort of like, not everyone got along in the scene all the time, and you were young, and there was message boards. That's what people did back then. There was the Long Island Zoo board, and people talked shit about each other, and sometimes they would do it on stage, right. and we did that. we all. I'm gonna say Lou is innocent, but like the rest of us definitely did that in our own way. I was like the message board guy, and Jason was the guy on the mic that would talk shit. Apparently Tommy did too, and I didn't know that. But it pissed off some people. People didn't have a good sense of humor about it, as they shouldn't. We were dicks, and it costed us $40,000 in a tour bus and a lot of credit card bills that could have been paid off. We're still trying to pay off those credit card bills.
Oh yeah, those credit card bills. Yeah.
But you know what? We, as they say, as you grow older, you get wiser. So I actually, for me, I can say I'm like friends with a lot of those guys now that had issues with us.
Right. It's sort of weird. Like everything gets mended,
Yeah.
If you're around long enough, and especially with like Jason's passing, you sort of realize what you really worried about, and something tragic like that happens.
Yeah.
It sort of shrinks all the other problems. And then when new problems come up, you kind of like, it's not really a problem.
Yeah.
Compared to what we dealt with, and, in the light of.
At the end of the day, I think back about all that stuff. Like, we toured, we got a decent amount of fans. We got to tour Europe and shit. That was awesome. And when we played reunion shows, people showed up, and so like having that sort of to look back on makes it all sort of fine now. It all worked out in some way.
How did the end of On the Mighty Princess happen?
Well, basically, Jay's health wasn't great. It was evident, that he wasn't in a great place, and as I mentioned, we didn't always get along, and and you hear about this a lot with any band stories.
Absolutely.
Any band that breaks up, sometimes you're lucky and the tensions go away, but with us, at the end of the day, those tensions were still there, and so when we tried to get back together and actually write new material and be a band, which I can't remember what year that was, 2012. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, we just ended up fighting again, and unfortunately, that was the last time we all saw.
And then the same thing happened in 2005 when you guys broke up the first time, or was it?
Yeah, 2004. We broke up in Europe during our first European tour.
Hey, I hear that all the time.
And our,
I do.
I mean, it's amazing too. Thanks for bringing that up, because it's more interesting. This is a more interesting part of the band is we have a record out on Revelation Records, which is a big deal, at the time. And we're touring Europe. We've never done that before. We got a driver, and we're playing festivals, and it's what you want to happen.
That's all you want.
Yeah, we're playing a couple thousand people sometimes. It's nuts. And actually headlining our own shows in between, and it's not empty. In Switzerland and Amsterdam, that's crazy, right?
Yeah, so basically the dream.
It's a dream.
Yeah.
But again, when you just don't get along, no matter what, no matter how good your business or your band is doing, or if you're roommates, this shit's going to come up. So I feel bad saying this, many of us were not happy, and kind of hashed out on our last show of the tour. We kind of knew that we could not continue doing this anymore.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to work, and it wasn't going to go where we wanted to go. So we and it was weird. It was kind of like almost like it was meant to be or something. Like we had played all these great shows in Europe, and this last show was horrible. It was like 10 people there, and we played in front of those 10 people as if it was our last show.
Right.
And then we didn't talk for like 3 years.
Unbelievable. Like you said, like here you are, like as kids, you know, you start this band and it's the first time that people, like you said, you know, you're 18 and they start giving a shit and they go up to you, and then you build up to this tour. You guys signed to Revelation Records. You're doing your thing.
Yeah.
But you guys just can't get along enough to just hold it together, and it's almost easier to, I guess, leave it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was because, again, you don't know what you're doing, and I was always super jealous and upset about how that worked out, because around me, everybody was getting super successful. That was the height, you know. So as happy as I was, the truth is, like, you know, we were watching bands that opened up for us, like headlining fucking Irving Plaza, places we grew up going to, and then it kind of felt like we were left in the dust, you know, and it was our own fault. So, you know, it was really frustrating for a while. And it was also just hard to be around that kind of music for a while, because I associated it with, you know, I wanted to try some, for me personally, I wanted to try something new. It's kind of why I moved to Brooklyn. There was a different kind of thing going on there at that time. And we all are musicians. We've been in different bands that sound different from the last one. It's cool to do that, but I you know, it was hard to listen to if like a band that I grew up with came on K-Rock, which was crazy to hear that at the time.
Right.
It would just kind of make you feel bad. I was a little bitter about it, you know. But
I mean, it's pretty honest, man. Definitely.
I got to be honest about it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know, later on, I learned to be very happy and proud, especially now at Revolver, you know, having had interviewed Daryl Palumbo, you know, as a fellow musician from the same place, you know, like it's different now when you're older, but at the time it was rough, man, everything about it, because we worked so hard, and we didn't know how to network that way and be cool with everybody. It was, we just didn't handle it the right way, and it was the wrong group of people. You know,
and I think, like, you know, if On the Mind of Princes did have that great European tour and everything did go great, you know, and then those other bands around you still had success, probably easier to handle, because you're thinking like, oh shit, we're all doing good, we're on a smaller scale, maybe the next record, you know, we sign to wherever. So, but probably because shit was going bad, it was probably easier to just focus on the negative.
It was, actually a funny thing you just sort of sparked my memory back a little bit. Like, we never got to the point where we made a music video like everybody else, and we were about to, and the folks at Rev were pretty positive they could get us airplay just like everybody else was at the time. But yeah, we kind of blew it. That's what happened. We blew it, you know, and it's okay to say that. That's what happened.
Yeah, but it's kind of it's most of, you know, our friends, their bands, and their trajectory is blowing it, you know, and you look back and you say, like, I could have done this, I could have done that, but it's a tough path. I mean, planets have to align. You have to win the lottery to get into, you know, being a successful band. Most of our stories are like what you're talking about, and you're being honest about, you know, hearing another band that gets successful and jealousy, or, you know, some competitive nature, but that's the truth. You know, you get in it to be a bigger and better band, and then within the band you have personalities. It's tougher than dating, and you have all these things, dealing with a record label, dealing with all things that you don't know how to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like anything, and I think it's okay to say that if you set up shop on a block and a whole bunch of people do the same thing, and the store across the street's bringing more customers and money than you're going to be upset about it, you know. But we were happy. I was happy later on. I think once I had enough time to sort of grow as a person, try new different bands and stuff like that, I kept going. So like I kind of, while that band sort of withered away, I was still determined as a drummer and as a musician to find whatever I could find to keep it going. And you know, it's literally 20 years later, and I have not stopped.
No, I like I like the
Yeah.
Gracer stuff too. I remember you were
Thanks.
playing Gracer, and I thought Justin was doing some really interesting stuff with like the programming and stuff like that too. And then I think you played with Tommy again, right, in Villavina.
Yeah, we the Gracer was lucky, and we ended up on Revelation after on the Might of Princes. I guess they sort of took a chance on me, and said, "All right, we'll release your next band." That sort of was a quick thing. Didn't really work
But
out.
you guys, I felt like you guys grinded a lot.
We grinded. We toured hard, you know, but
Yeah.
we never got to that level of the Coheeds or the Brand News. We were trying. We you know, I backtrack just really quick, if I may. Also, I think a lot, and I'm not saying all of them, but I think some of the bands that were around back then that were picking up on what was happening. A lot of bands were starting out with the intent of being a huge band,
Right.
and being able to figure out how to do that. And I think that was the difference as to part of why we weren't able to do that. But
You had that sort of weird moment where you started just to do whatever. You know you're in a
Yeah.
small scene. You're the smallest band in the smallest scene.
Yeah.
And you might hit like getting a little bit bigger,
yeah,
but then you don't know how to make that jump.
exactly.
But bands that started, like what you're saying, they start with like handing their demos to Warner Brothers.
Absolutely.
We,
I mean,
we were psyched if Revelation heard it.
This
if
is
Age Records heard
you
it.
guys
Yeah.
gotta
But
laugh.
it's like,
you know?
oh,
Yeah,
you know, you got to have your demo for
Warner
you know,
Brothers.
It's unbelievable.
Profile.
That
It's
is
unbelievable.
funny.
I mean, this is a time period now when bands are playing a VFW hall and they have laminates hanging off of their keychains. That's crazy, you know. But beyond that, I mean, the thing is, like, a lot of bands were starting out with the intent, right, of like they're gonna dress a certain way and sound a certain way. As successful as I wanted to be as a musician, I think the musicians that I've always chosen to play with and the way I look at things refuse to play a style or a genre with that in mind. I think that, and it sounds cliche, but like writing cool music for me and the people I've chosen to play with over the years, I think supersedes, like, you know, the success part of the popularity contest. So it's like, let's write some cool shit and hope that somehow people will catch on to it.
right.
And I think that's, in my opinion, the way. Hey, there's nothing wrong if you want to start a band and just be fucking huge and play what everyone's playing, but that's just not the kind of shit that I want to listen to. And I wouldn't be comfortable playing in a band, even if I knew that it was going to get huge, knowing that that was going on. Music is very important for me to actually like it and have it meaningful.
That
you
sounds
know? Yeah.
that sounds amazingly foreign that I can't even wrap my head around what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, most people don't think that way,
Yeah.
and that's fine. But and I'm totally stoked now on, like, you know, where I'm at, you know, and I think it's okay to say that now.
Is Brooklyn your home now?
Yeah,
Like, do you feel it?
I've thought about moving to LA, but when I realized, because I got to know that community a lot better through my job, I'm going there a lot, but I just don't want to drive around all the time.
It's about having a car.
I like New York
It's the,
City. I love New York City.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
And
yeah.
this, like, your main band that you play right now is Primitive Weapons.
To an extent, you know, like, so I ended up, Primitive Weapons is the band I've been in for 7 years, and a lot of Long Island lineage there, you know, Mind Over Matter, Airtype 11, Artie, but Spotlights actually is the band I play with the most, which is an interesting band. Like, it's a great example too. Like, I mean, I'm not trying to brag or name drop, but like Spotlights is a very
Brag a little.
sort of like,
Yeah.
For it.
it's a
Floss on us a little.
Well, it's interesting because it's kind of weird.
Bring
You
us up to
mentioned a lot.
speed.
Yeah.
if you will.
Spotlights is like a very sort of artsy band, and like I'll tell you how this happened. But like, my first tour with the band was opening up for the Deftones.
Yeah.
As soon as I joined the band,
I was there.
yeah, it was weird.
At Coney Island.
Yeah. I mean, I started a couple days later.
Okay,
It was
yeah.
a different guy.
But I mean the tour.
Yeah, but that's exactly, so, you know, that's exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, this is a band to me, like, that you would never hear. I don't know if you guys have checked out the band yet,
Yes.
but like, you would never hear this band on the radio
Husband and wife too, right?
It's a husband and wife duo. I haven't played on any records yet, but I've been with them for about a year and a half now. And their music, I mean, you mentioned like it's like a lottery, right? Like you never know who's going to hear it. They were playing a show. Their record release show was at ABC No Rio when I first watched them.
Oh wow!
And then the next show was opening up for the Deftones at the Coney Island Amphitheater, like 5 months later.
Amazing.
It's wild. So like, and that's why I'm kind of stoked.
Just out of curiosity, how did that happen?
Well, obviously it can't
break that down.
Yeah, I'm trying to duplicate that.
uninitiated.
Well, obviously,
Yeah.
Can't really get into that and not explain that, but
Yeah.
they're just to wrap up that whole idea though is like, the reason I brought that up is because not just to plug the band I'm in now, but also just because it's an artistic band that is sort of saying, well, we want our music to be awesome for us first, and it happened to sort of catch on to some degree where it's working out now. But the guy, the band ISIS.
Yeah.
So the guys in ISIS the band, for anyone that might not know that there was a band called ISIS.
I thought you meant the terrorist group.
Yeah.
Right, not the
I
terrorist
know the terrorist group. I don't know the band.
Spotlights is a married couple from San Diego. They lived in San Diego. I guess they befriended some of the guys in ISIS somehow. I don't know how. I think that maybe they were fans and they met him and they became friends. So that's sort of the long story short is
who are in Psalms with Chino.
Palms, yeah.
Palms.
The guys Palms is basically ISIS with Chino from Deftones singing. ISIS is Chino's favorite band supposedly, and the drummer for ISIS was also a drum tech for the Deftones, and he had played Spotlights for Chino, and so we actually got handpicked by Chino. We didn't have an agent or a manager. I wasn't in the band actually when it happened. It's a funny story. After I saw them play a few times, they had seen me play a few times as well, and they wanted to get rid of the drummer. So they asked me to fill in on drums for a tour because their drummer couldn't do it, and I told them I was too busy and I didn't have time.
Good move.
And I still feel bad about it to this day because they always remind me. And
girls love that trick.
And he goes, "Well, you can't tell anybody, but the tour is opening up for the Deftones." And refused. And then immediately I was like, "Oh yeah, no, I could do it. That's fine. I'll just
Got it.
But yeah, Chino actually heard the band organically, not through like. It was just a mutual friend, and they got a phone call from a random agent. Like the dude that hooked up the tour didn't tell them what happened. They got a call from an agent, and they thought it was like a prank call or something. And and they're like, are you available to tour during this time? Long story short, it ended up being Deftones refused.
But even to put a finer point on what you're saying, like to be picked to go on a tour, a lot of times that involves your record label paying money.
Yeah.
To be on that tour, to pay for the buses, to all these things. So if you're organically picked, as you put it, and not have to pay, and the band's just like you,
right?
It's a throwback a little bit to maybe some of the stories we hear on Behind the Music. Great stories of like, we got on tour, but these days, it's a monetary choice.
Right.
We'll take you on tour because you can either bring in people, you can bring in money, or you're going to pay to be on this tour.
Right.
So for you just to be picked without any of that is really rare, and I'm not sure most people understand how that works.
Yeah, it's extremely rare. Like, and it's so crazy because I also have never heard of that happening much these days. Like, we drove ourselves, had no merch person, it was very much like a DIY situation, but like playing amphitheaters.
They just liked it, which is a credit to you and a credit to them.
Yeah, it's crazy.
They could pick any band and say, just pay for the advertising.
Absolutely,
right.
because
it's
everyone
$20,000 or something.
But the thing is, like, I was a fan of the band before I found out that they were doing this thing. So it's like that to me, and they were writing their own music and doing the thing they were doing before. So it was organic, like.
And he must have really loved it because everyone's chasing the same nickel. So records don't sell. So everyone's on tour. So now that everyone's on tour, they're thinking like, oh shit, we're the Deftones, but we've already toured 3 times on this album cycle. Now what do? We get refused. Okay, so we'll share that ticket.
Funny, I kept forgetting that they were there.
Oh,
So it was so, and I love Refused that alone, like because it was so overshadowed. But
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, the Refused is here
Refused
too.
playing too.
It was like crazy.
It's such an incredible bill.
And like I said, you're that's amazing because you do want as many people that could draw, but he's hearing this record and he's like taking a chance on a new band, which is awesome for bands like that to do, because then who knows, 5-10 years from now you guys are still doing your thing and putting out records and you guys are the new Deftones.
Yeah, I mean, and that's goes back to what we were saying before, is like helping new bands. That's what you're supposed to do. So it's really cool that they do that. I can't think of any. I'm sure some other people do, but I can't, off the top of my head, just name anybody that's been doing that.
Well, Metallica took out Avenged Sevenfold.
Actually, that's a good.
Right.
Well, they were huge already, though.
I'm just completely kidding.
Well, you know what? Metallica took out actually Baroness.
Okay,
That's a good. And they take out Torch sometimes, but like.
But there's also like, if you're Metallica, you don't necessarily need the opening band to draw.
absolutely
in the same
not.
way that Deftones does.
Yeah.
Because it's a middle, it's like almost like middle class of touring.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They're not the biggest, they're going to play the mid-range
Absolutely.
venues.
They're not
so
playing
they
the Garden.
could use another, $20,000 in
Yes.
their pocket, and they're going to get a little bit of pushback from the management saying like, well, you could take, this band on this label, and they're going to draw a little bit more, or they'll chip in for advertising. People don't think these things happen, but you will get the Slayer tour if you pay for the buses.
Well, yeah,
I don't know how it
too.
happens now,
Yeah.
but there was a lot of that back in the day, in the 90s when I was touring.
Yeah.
But it was like, how did this band get on that tour?
Well, you toured
and
with
that
Seven
the headliner definitely doesn't like this opening band. You're like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
It's like, because there was a deal made between management companies. And like, fair enough. Like, if I was a touring band and you got to figure out the math of how expensive it is to tour, insurance, and all these things, you might just say, well, we'll just take this band.
Yeah.
Fair enough. It's a business. But for a band like Deftones at this level to take you, it says a lot.
Yeah, it was amazing, and I have so much, because that band embodies to me now, like they didn't want to go on tour with Limp Bizkit, and they turned down tours of Korn because they didn't want to be part of that new metal thing, and so took out small bands instead. And it's funny, like, I don't know if people know this, but Chino had mentioned in several interviews, Pantera actually did that for them, and that's how they got their start getting big. And after us, they took out other bands that
And they were on
sort of,
Madonna's short-lived label Maverick.
Yeah.
I remember that's what White Pony came out on.
Yeah.
But Adrenaline was like an interesting record, but they changed it up very quick with Around the Fur, and then they just knocked it out of the park with White Pony.
So important for them to exist right now.
Yeah. They're definitely like one of the biggest bands doing what they do, but they grind. They tour a lot on an album cycle.
Yeah.
Like,
you know who else
lot.
they took out too? A bunch of times, Glassjaw.
Yeah.
That's right.
Back
yeah,
then.
back
Yeah.
in the day. Yeah. But I think a couple years ago too. Yeah. But
Yeah.
so that and Primitive Weapons, we tour and do what we can, but and we have a new record coming out, but Spotlights is sort of like next 4 months.
Yeah.
It's just Spotlights. So it's cool. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But I don't know. I'm not going to stop. I thought I was going to stop, but we gotta. Once you start playing music, and I took a break for a few years, and now I realize I'm just like, it's like a sickness. The good stuff that
I
comes
quit.
with it.
Unless
you
you're
quit.
me, I stopped.
Yeah, it is a sickness.
You still do the occasional reunion show.
It is.
Yeah, and in the last few, I didn't want to do it. I fought. I was the guy in the band I always got annoyed at, because all the reunions I wanted to do, and they did. Some of them didn't want to do, and then I was like, I don't want to do it.
You'll sing on a Glassjaw song if you're asked.
It's a good gig.
It is a sickness.
Yeah.
It's like the ultimate passion that, for the most part, for 99% of us, is just pure passion.
Yeah.
You're still doing it.
Yeah, but it's because I love, like, I'm listening to 9 demos that we just made now for the new record that no one will listen to it, but like I'm listening to it.
Right.
And I love the art of the songwriting, because it's still like you have nothing. you have a guitar part. And then from there, as time goes on, you just turn it into this song, and it's never not made me fucking happy.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to... once you know what that feels like, it's hard to live your life.
Yeah.
George, I think you should get back into it. That's what I'm saying.
Well, we have podcasting now. This is his new thing.
Podcast is scratching the itch.
I could do both. I'm just saying.
But you guys, like, Sam and Chris, you guys have that, like, thing where it's so much in you. And
is it because we're Hispanic?
Is that
You're
what
Hispanic?
it is?
Partially. I'm Filipino.
All right, well, that's our show. But it's like it's in you, and I feel I'm almost like jealous.
I don't know. There's two sides to it because you get burned out too. It's equally disappointing as it is gratifying.
Oh yeah,
we all know that, but I think it takes,
especially once you up the ante.
If you ever like George, like you toured with Seven Dust when you were in Day in the Life. I remember that. You've done a lot of that stuff, but it's weird. Like it's, I'll bring up a Long Island VOD. Like I think is a good example of a band that like sort of, and Tim was in Blood Simple. They took it to a pretty big level, stopped for whatever reason, and they still do the thing now. Now they're back, but their shows might not be as packed as they used to, but they still do it, and they make it work for their own lifestyles, which I think is cool. They're a very rare example of a band from where we're coming from right here.
Maybe that's like the way to do it now.
Yeah.
It's like you can sort of like, back in the day, you felt like you had to leave your life, leave for 3 months. And some of that I definitely got burnt out on. You got into debt. You missed all the family stuff.
Horrible.
And it's
losing friends and shit.
It's not a slight trade-off. It's a complete life-changing trade-off. And then now with music, like maybe some of it, like when I would do music, and I love to write and everything, but I don't want to go to practice on Tuesday night anymore.
I feel you. Well, singers that don't have to play guitar have that ability where they could be like, just send me the songs when you're done.
Yeah.
But
I'll write to it.
I'm not a good singer, so I feel like I have to be at every practice. I have to figure it out. I have to be there every second and like try and like do as I've always done, is like, get into it as you guys write it. Because otherwise I don't know what to do.
I think that's good though, because being present is, it's like back in the day when you were young, right? Like, not that we're that old, but like he would practice for 6 or 7 hours. It's crazy to think about that now.
Absolutely.
And
no problem.
Yeah.
But then it feels like exhausting to me, and maybe that's the switch.
That's a switch.
Where before it was energizing, and then now it feels like in order for me to do what I do, it takes so much effort. Where even like interviewing Daryl, we're going to do an interview with Tim from VOD.
Nice.
And it's like all these singers I know, they just sing. It's not a big deal for them. And for me, it feels exhausting. Like I have to put in 6 hours where they put in 20 minutes.
Right.
I mean, you still have the mic and you're still saying words. I think this is your thing now.
No, but what I did wrong is I should have been a rapper.
Okay.
Really? That's why I screwed everything up.
Well, he always had that sort of swagger to him.
Absolutely. I told you on our podcast, in between like our set, I would be like, if I had nothing to say, I'm like, I'm sorry George Reynolds isn't here to talk to you guys.
Yeah.
Because he just fucking did it so effortlessly.
Yeah.
So did Artie though, but Artie was on a different spectrum.
Oh yeah.
Different approaches.
Sam, we'll have to write some music together, and we'll get George to put some vocals on it.
Yeah, that's Well, I'll do the acoustic guitar, which I know you like. So.
Oh man, that'd be
I'm
sick.
just kidding. I once tried to get him to do a U2 cover with me once, and that
George Reynolds Unplugged would be dope.
Unplugged. Yeah. So, just out of curiosity,
this is George Reynolds Unplugged.
That's true.
As we all get older, it's hard to squeeze anything into a schedule. How is it that you're able to fit so much into your day?
Well, I'm single.
That fucking helps. You know what? You know who's texting and calling me nonstop? My girlfriend.
Now I feel bad.
No,
that we're sitting here.
She keeps texting me, and that's why I had to take a picture. I'm like, I'm fucking still here.
You're gonna have to edit that part out.
Yeah.
No, it was hard. I used to have to use vacation time, and actually, Spotlights just did a 4-month tour with the Melvins, and I only did maybe 12 of the 73 shows, and they played to a drum track.
Wow.
Yeah.
How fucking hard is that?
They just didn't want to say no, obviously. We played to a click track.
But I'm saying, so they couldn't find someone else to fill in the rest of the tour?
We tried actually, and I'm not going to get into it too much, but like the drummer from Hum almost filled in actually.
Nice.
That was wild because we're huge fans.
Of
but
course,
didn't work out. But we had a couple friends and stuff. Didn't really work. I was happy that there was. At the end of the day, I was happy there was no human being. To compete with. But the band sort of got some electronic stuff going on, so it didn't seem too bizarre. It would have been weird if it was like a 5-piece hardcore band playing a drum machine, but they made it work.
A 4-month tour is a fucking long time.
I felt bad. It wasn't ideal. They played 60 something shows to a drum machine.
Yeah.
And it was tough knowing that was going on. But now at my job, they've given me a leap of faith that I can work from the road.
So just remote work, definitely.
So now I'm just working remotely. Because if I have a phone or the ability to email, that's really all I need. I'll do an occasional meeting, but I can do this.
You don't ever get work stress.
It's gonna be tough, but because I want this so bad, I can make it work domestically. We're touring Europe from April to May, so it's gonna be tough being in a different time zone. But to be honest with you, if I have to be on the phone at 4:00 in the morning with a client, it's like sort of the pill that I have to swallow. So that's how I'm making this work right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. You could be fucking a laborer somewhere doing some hard ass fucking,
exactly. You can't complain about it.
No.
If you're playing music, then and people will, you know what I mean? You can't, I don't understand. I get why people are bummed out, but at the same time I don't, I feel like anybody that needs a lecture.
Maybe I need the lecture because I'm probably the guy who's bummed out.
You know what?
No, I didn't mean
all right. You need the lecture.
That, not like that, But you see these guys that are
maybe I need a lecture.
Well, you do. Yeah. I never thought I would lecture. I never thought I'd lecture the guy that sang in my favorite Long Island hardcore band, but I guess I'll lecture you later on.
I thought you said Glass Show was.
Oh shit, flip flopping. Yeah. Well, there was the innovator.
Absolutely, the influence.
They were the innovators, and then the product of it.
Absolutely,
they were my favorite product of Long Island.
Just for the record, and you know this from being on the Might of Princes.
Yeah,
you always get that my favorite record, most influential, equals zero money.
Yeah.
Means you didn't make a dime.
It's funny. I tried out for
the Ramones said the same thing.
I tried out for Glassjaw while I was in On the Might of Princes and didn't tell them. That's how bad I wanted to be in the band, and they found out. And they were so pissed.
Wow.
They were like, "Dude, what the fuck?"
Who was pissed, Glassjaw or On
No?
the Might?
Well, I didn't end up in Glassjaw. Obviously, it didn't work out. But my bandmates in On the Might of Princes were pretty upset when they found out that I tried out behind their backs. Wow. They're like, "What the fuck, dude? Why would you do that?"
Man, good thing you didn't get that job then.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, like semi-successful bands that are bummed out, or some people they play it off like they're bummed out, like the whole Kurt Cobain mentality. I see bands today, some that do that, and I'm just like, it makes me so. And I'm like, dude, just be fucking happy that somebody wants to watch you sing your song.
And you gotta know your lane. If your thing is that you play and then you gotta take a break and then take a break. If you gotta churn things out, if you get stuck in that cycle, then it's bad.
Especially in this day and age.
Yeah.
It's like you're in a rock band. Rock bands aren't the biggest bands anymore. So be happy that that they have 200 people watching.
Absolutely. If I made the money that I made at work playing music, I'd be straight. I wouldn't even care.
I know, right?
Right?
I mean, don't get it twisted. I'm not doing. We don't do the band for a living. I would like to, but
no. But still, you fucking playing music.
Yeah,
that's fucking awesome. Real quick, actually, I really wanted to ask you. I feel
like I'm taking a lot of your time, guys.
No. I really wanted to ask you real quick because I'm a huge Saddle Creek fan. But how did the Criteria thing happen?
So it's
the guy from Cursive. Like when Cursive first started, right? It was the guitarist that left and started a band.
That's right. Yeah. So I guess real quick, right after Gracer broke up in about 2006, we had the same booking agent as a lot of those indie rock bands, and not Cursive, but Criteria, who were on Saddle Creek. They were kind of a big deal at the time. They had a tour in a week or two with the Smoking Popes. Kind of legendary.
Right. Yeah.
And their drummer bailed, and it was so weird. This sort of thing happens to me a lot. I never met these guys ever. I was a fan, and our booking agent, I guess, gave him our record. It's like, oh, this guy can learn your songs really quick and do it. And they didn't have any other options. They had a couple friends, didn't work out. And I had a phone conversation with Steven from Cursive, and he, I guess it was just like, all right, he's cool. He's a cool guy. He sounds okay. Never met me before. And just flew me out to Omaha, and I practiced with the band like 2 or 3 times, and then I went on tour.
How long was the tour?
It's like a week or 2.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Preventing the World was like one of the best songs written of that. Like, it's just so, like, that record's great, but I remember hearing that song and just thinking, and I was a huge Cursive fan. But I remember when you were doing that, because maybe I mentioned something to you or something, but I was just like, holy shit.
It was random.
Yeah, it was completely random, right?
Because it's like to do drummer
Omaha.
shit too, yeah.
Like, you know?
Like in between, I was trying to play in other people's bands and shit.
Very cool.
It worked
very
out,
cool.
yeah.
All right. I always wanted to know.
I don't want to get you guys in trouble. I know that your lady's texting you. You know.
Your lady's texting you?
Oh, yeah. That's fine.
I was actually in the bathroom peeing, and I heard that story.
Shit. George is not happy about that.
I don't care. But yeah.
Anything else you got?
Well, since the name of the podcast is If I Ruled the World, there's a thing we wanted to try and implement, and we keep forgetting to do it.
Woo!
So, if you ruled the world, Chris Enriquez, what would that look like?
For one thing, if I ruled the world, you would have to pay for music. I know people are going to get upset that I said that. I mean, it's cool, but I think
people in this room.
I think people. I think it'd be nice if people had to. It was more challenging for people to have to get their art, and it would make it more valuable to people if it was like that. So that's one thing I would like to go back to the old school ways. But on a overall sense, it would be nice if everybody had health insurance, and if everybody had the ability to get a good education, and certainly if we had a better president. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Vote for Chris Enriquez.
That's it. If he ruled the world, you heard it here. It's possible. I mean, the guy went from like On the Mighty Princess to Gracer to Primitive Weapons to working for Loudwire and Revolver. So like, it's not out of the realm that he can rule the world in like 5 years.
The rock world, maybe.
Yeah.
We voted for Justin Brennan.
Yeah.
Could there be a political future for Chris
Oh,
Enriquez?
man, there are too many dark things in my past that if they found out even just one thing that was fucked up, nobody would want that.
We all know after the Trump presidency,
that's true.
Dark past doesn't mean anything.
Now, I think I'm going to stick to promoting metal bands and playing drums for people. I think that's what I'm going to stick at.
Yeah, the way you promote things, the way you've connected dots, and the way you are is better in our community than being a politician. Because if you become a politician, I have to distrust you.
Yes.
I have to think you're up to no good.
And George, if you were in a band, again, I would be your first advocate to do whatever I could to help you.
Well, the day is young.
Yeah,
we got
exactly.
A guitarist, a drummer, and a singer here.
There we go.
And I have an open basement.
Oh, shit.
Let's shut this podcast off and make some music, guys.
All right, let's do it.
All right.
All right.
Peace
Fire
out.
the world.
Bye.
If I ruled the world.